Yeah, somebody had asked me a question about this crossfire injection engine. They said the car will crank, but it won't run. And you know, somebody asked me a question on my YouTube channel. I'm eager to get involved because I actually, working on this car is kind of a hobby for me. I actually love this engine. I know a lot of people have problems with it. I mean, they don't like it, you know, but that's not me. I actually love this engine. I actually wish I could get another one. But one of the first things if you look at the factory service manual, one of the first things it says is it talks about this coolant temperature sensor on the front of the engine block up here, and it basically says that if that circuit, that coolant temperature sensor, is malfunctioning, the factory service manual basically says if that sensor, that coolant temperature sensor, is malfunctioning, showing open, then the electronic control module will automatically think that the temperature is 40 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, and it will automatically go into what they call clear flood mode. So the car will crank, but it won't start. So that was one issue, but that's kind of different than what happened with the person. I think what he was saying, what I was understanding him to say, but I just thought I would make this video and try to share, you know, kind of something that I see happening a lot. And there's kind of a difference if the car will, like, if you crank the car and it starts up and then it just shuts right off. That's kind of a different scenario. One of the things is, this is the fuel pump relay right here. Like, this is the map sensor and this is the fuel pump relay. And if you look, excuse me, I kind of pull these wires apart. You'll see these red. You've got red and orange and etc., etc. And then I'll show you on the electrical schematic how these wires kind of work. The oil pressure switch is back in here. It's below this wiper motor. But these wires, if you look, here's the battery. The wires only have about maybe 12, 18 inches to run before they get to the fuel pump relay and the oil pressure switch. And one of the issues with this system is, well, I'm going to have to show you on the electrical schematic, but there's a fusible link that goes on that red wire that comes from the battery and breaks off and goes over to the fuel pump relay and the oil pressure switch. And one of the things he was telling me, I'm not the best video person in the world. I do the best I can, you know, but one of the things about putting 12 volts of current, because you can burn yourself pretty good with 12 volts. Putting 12 volts of current with the key on in the ignition and then just disconnecting voltage onto the battery, you're going to send a spike of current into the system real quick like. And that fusible link could burn out pretty quick. There's also a fusible link that goes over here to this. It breaks off and has two fusible links. I'll show you in the schematic, but one of the fusible links goes to the cooling fan relay, which is right here. And here's the master cylinder, and then here's the cooling relay. This relay works only the cooling fan. it doesn't work anything else. I'm probably going to have to go in to show you this because the wind's blowing, and whenever I work outside and the wind's blowing, and all you can hear when I'm talking is wind blowing. But here are the wiring schematics on that circuit in the electrical troubleshooting shop manual supplement. But this one is 8A17. This one is, this schematic is 8A21. And then the other one that picks up where that one leaves off is 8A17. But if you look at I was talking when I was out at the car, I was talking about this. This is a 3mm, which I'm not sure exactly what that converts into AWG. I know that would be a very large red wire coming straight from the battery that is hot all the time. And it comes down to a splice number 332. What that splice breaks off and goes to the engine cooling fan relay, which is when I showed you. The guy would just disregard that totally. And then once it gets past that splice, then you have a 2mm or gauge. They're saying 2mm is 14 AWG size wire. It breaks off, it gets a little bit smaller. And then you've got a connection right here, number 341, that connects into this fusible link right here. That after that fusible link, you have another splice. Then you have that's 2mm gauge wire circuit. This is circuit 340. Goes into another splice, number 340 right here, where it breaks off to 1mm gauge wire going to the oil pressure switch. Oil pressure switch. And then on this side it breaks off over here and goes to the fuel pump relay. After that it just goes over to the electronic control module. But one of the things, here's again, I'll tell you, I'm not very good at making videos. I just try to help people as best I can. Here's another schematic of it, 8A21. Coming off the battery feed where it breaks off from that splice and it goes into 1mm. And I'm trying to see what they're saying that gauge is on 16 gauge wire. It goes to the oil pressure switch. It goes over to the fuel pump relay. This is a larger picture of what actually is happening here, but the point is it comes off of this comes right out of this fusible link that's coming hot all the time straight from the battery. So the problem with putting a lot of juice on this fusible link, this link could burn out pretty quick. And you have to remember they're over 30 years old now, so if this fusible link burns out, there is not going to be any power. There's not going to be any power to the oil pressure switch and the fuel pump relay. But the way the car is designed is if the fuel pump relay malfunctions, then, and you can crank the engine over and build up 4 psi of oil pressure, this oil pressure switch will close. I'll go back to the setting. This oil pressure switch, like it says, closed with normal cranking oil pressure. So all you need is 4 psi. And this oil pressure switch completes the circuit, and then the engine will start because you'll be able to communicate. The ECM will be able to communicate with the fuel pump. But if you're having problems with, it'll crank and crank. So what happened, well, let me back up here. One of the things that happened was he wasn't getting any power to the fuel pump relay just with the key on, just sitting there. But he was able to take and jump straight from the battery to the fuel pump relay, and he could hear the pump come on. But that's, that's all fine and dandy, because what happens when you do that is it's going to prime the throttle bodies. And you're going to be able to start the car. It'll start, but it won't run for more than a couple of seconds, and it'll just shut back off again because there's no fuel pressure. So one of the things that I was suggesting if you're having like a engine cranks but it won't stay running, I would look at this fusible link in this line right here. The car is actually full of fusible links, but these two right here seem to be problematic. This is the one that goes to the cooling fan relay, and this is the one that goes to the fuel pump relay and the oil pressure switch. Without these two able to get 12 volts, you're not going to be able to start the car. I don't know, I hope this helps somebody. I don't know, like I say again for the third time, I'm not really very good at making videos or how-to videos. Here's some more talking about fusible links. Here's a fusible link that comes off the battery right here, and here are 3 fusible links that come straight off the starter. They go to different things, the generator. So these fusible links can cause you a lot of trouble in these old cars.